Welcome to Conflict Managed. I'm your host, Mary Brown. Conflict Managed is a weekly podcast about toxic work environments and how to fix them. We're glad you're here. Good morning, Mike, and welcome to Conflict Managed.
Good morning. Great to be here, Mary. I'm
That's
excited to
great.
talk with you today.
Yes, me as well. I'm very interested in what you're doing and specifically build my team and how that helps us have better work environments. But before we get to that, I would like to start with what is the first job you ever had as a young person?
Oh boy. It was computerizing and optometry practice. That was the first one. Yeah.
Tell us about that. What did that entail and how old were you?
Well, I was in, I think, junior high, probably grade 9 or grade 10 or something like that. And I can't remember exactly, but got a job through co-op education in high school I wanted to be an eye doctor. Well, I thought I wanted to be an eye doctor. Nobody knows for sure at that point, but got into an optometry practice just through IT skills. And, just like a lot of kids have, I mean, it's the one marketable skill most kids have nowadays is on the IT side of things. And they got in there, kind of got the whole ball rolling for me.
It is interesting because you are an optometrist. That's one of the things that you do.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty specific. Why optometry at such a young age?
I knew I wanted to be self-employed, the entrepreneur side of things in me. But the main thing was there's a million jobs you can do with that, probably more. Um, what I loved about eye care is scientifically, it's absolutely fascinating. I'm still fascinated by it. I mean, if you don't think it's fascinating, close your eyes and try and spend the next 30 seconds of your life moving. It won't take a minute before you agree with me. And the other part of it was get to help people. Like, it's really cool to wake up in the morning and help make people's lives better. I felt that since the dawn of time, and I'll always feel that way. It's what drives me.
Hmm. Did you have anybody in your family that was in the healthcare profession?
Nope, not a single one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so as in high school, you get into optometry and sort of take us through just you went right into college into that, or did you try some other fields?
No, went right into undergrad. Yeah, I'm originally from Western Canada, so went into undergrad in Western Canada, and then applied for optometry school down in Philadelphia, and got into Philly, and moved to Philly with to say it's a culture shock. I don't. It was a culture tsunami. It was a culture tornado, hurricane. It was a like the locusts, cultural locusts. It was so big of a difference. I grew up in a town of 500 people. We didn't have a stoplight. There was no traffic. My grad class was 18 people, and ended up moving to North Philly, which is an extraordinarily difficult part of the world. And so that was a heck of a challenge, but made it through by the skin of my teeth in that environment. And really, the nice thing is it really focused me on what I wanted out of life. And sometimes that focus comes from being exposed to what you definitely, definitely, definitely don't want.
Yeah, I mean, we learn so much from the hard
Yeah,
things, from
yeah.
yeah, what we don't want. That's interesting. So you come from this very different background than where you ended up in
Mhm.
grad school. So why stay there? Why not transfer and find a school that maybe more resonated with what you're comfortable with?
Well, some of it was the immigration side of things. Once you get in from another country to a school, that's very hard to do. But the downside of North Philly is the poverty, extreme poverty, crime, um, all those like really awful things. I don't know that it didn't qualify as third world, but it wasn't first. I'll tell you that much, somewhere in between. The upside of that, and this is something that we never realize as students, is that when people are in abject poverty like that, they don't take care of themselves. And so, from a learning standpoint, from a clinical standpoint, oh my goodness. We saw stuff that you only saw in textbooks, and we saw it 2 or 3 times a day. It's just one, as I tell patient or people, one patient after another with 9 toes in the grave walk through the front door.
Mm.
And as far as a learning experience, that was contrasted to other eye care schools where, people would see generally healthy people all day long. I mean, if you really want to learn how to if you really want to be a great doctor, kicking and screaming, you learn an environment with extremely unhealthy people. That's the unfortunate reality of it. And then after that, you can handle pretty much anything.
What's the environment at school? So the culture outside of the school is pretty difficult. What
Yeah.
about with your colleagues and then the practitioners who were teaching you?
Well, from the practitioner standpoint, most of them live locally, so they had it pretty much dialed. As far as the students, we came from all over the world, and that most of them had a easier time than I did because they're used to city type stuff. They're used to those types of things. Like one of my friends is from Manhattan, and he just slid from one city to the other without missing a beat, you know. But on the other hand, he couldn't drive a car. He had no idea how to drive a car. So there were some things that it was really cool to be exposed to all that stuff in hindsight, except for the violence. The violence was palpable and not fun at all. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so interesting also from a relatively young age. I mean, you weren't completely young, right? You're in your early 20s, I imagine.
Mhm.
But you have probably one set of expectations. You're you're going to be a doctor,
Yeah,
you're highly educated, and you have to be really good in order to even get into these competitive schools. You have a set of expectations, and it sounds like you're met with a different kind of reality. And it's very interesting how in all different kinds of environments, we find it. Because graduate school is like is a work environment, right?
sure.
So we
Hmm.
have a set of expectations, they're not met, and for a variety of reasons, like immigration status, other reasons,
Right.
you don't move. How did you make that adjustment to accepting the reality as is versus what you thought you were getting into?
Oh, that was, I don't know. I don't know that I ever did make the adjustment, to be blunt, to be absolutely blunt. Day by day by day was the move because there was no alternative.
Mhm.
And then, we got the first summer off, so I was able to go back to small town Alberta and take the deepest of all deep breaths that a human could ever take. And then, going back after that, I dreaded it. I
Mhm.
absolutely dreaded it. But it was a non-starter to stop. The amount of debt after the first year was like you either got to pull this off or else.
Mhm.
It's the or else was really, really nasty. And so I was able to with a whole bunch of help and assistance. I mean, I did not do that on my own, I'll tell you that much. I just was able to get through it.
And a lot of our listeners, you tune into a podcast like this because yeah, I talk about toxic work environments and how to fix them. And the reality is that when I open my social media and or I'm just talking with people, the real circumstances they find themselves in are dire. Sometimes they're not as, of course, dire as what you were talking about, the real difficulty, but many people are in tough situations that they consider toxic work environments, and they feel at this time they cannot move through it. And so we got to, if that is our environment, we have to find a way through. And as you said, you didn't do it on your own. So what kind of help did you find that helped you make it through and be successful?
Most of it was other students, parental help as well. Um, but I remember a conversation with my folks saying I needed a car. Now, of course, every college student or university student says that, and they're like, well, just take the bus. I'm like, you don't understand. I cannot. We were warned by the security head of security for our campus, who was a 20-plus-year-old undercover narcotics detective from Philly, retired. He gave us warnings about things like that and couldn't do it. So there were realities that were from small town Alberta, Canada, that were kind of extrapolated onto living in the ghetto in North Philly. And let me tell you, it just went like boink off my head. It was a non-starter. Could not possibly uh, do stuff like that.
Mhm.
We weren't even the campus security told us to walk in groups to the post office, and that was half a block away.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we would have post office dates if something had to be mailed. It was nuts. Yeah, nuts.
So when you graduated, where'd you go after that?
Third year was a couple rotations. So one of the rotations I did was in Western Canada. A couple were in Scranton, Pennsylvania, Northeast PA, which is where I live in that area now. Um, and was I was exposed to the Canadian healthcare system from inside it, as well as the American healthcare system. They're wildly different. That's a topic for a whole nother podcast. But after that, ended up in northeastern Pennsylvania.
And did you start your own business or did you go in with another established business?
Well, I had a software company at the time for practice management software. And my wife ended up starting a practice all the way back in 2002. And so she grew that until April 29th, 2008, when the whole building burnt down.
Mm.
Yeah, burned to the ground. And that's where I had to join the practice. And never looked back, thankfully. We've been able to, she and I have been able to grow the our current practice very healthily and very, very well.
Hmm. Sounds like your background is resilience is baked in to be where you are today and having to deal with these variety of adversities, right? We don't wish these awful experiences on anybody, and yet
Yeah.
there is a there is a lot that we can learn and grow, and I'm sure that has formed how you run your business today and how you think about your business into the future.
I think that applies to everybody to some extent.
Mhm.
On my side, I'll tell you, I spend a lot of time looking. I describe it as leaks in the bucket. So from a business standpoint, you focus all kinds of attention on pouring, new clients, patients into the top of the bucket, marketing, sales, all that stuff on the top of the bucket. Well, that works really well. Another thing that people overlook is plug the leaks. And then there's more that stays in the bucket. And I learned that later on in my career, that can be a substantial improvement in a business is to simply stop leaks, and focus on efficiency and systems and processes and that. And then the biggest thing, of course, is the team by far. I mean, hence the name of the business is Build My Team. But healthcare especially is, you know, docs so many docs think, yeah, the practice is about me. It's, couldn't exist without my service to the public. And yes, you're right. But on the other hand, like in our practice, the 10, 11 people that interact with patients, um, they're the ones running the show. They truly are. And the faster you can wrap your mind around that and adapt to that, the faster your business starts to do really well.
I want to go back a little bit to this idea of leaks in the bucket because I'm also very interested in systems and
Yeah.
what we focus on versus being efficient. And a lot of times it are those leaks. And if we think about them specifically when it comes to how we treat people at work, so systems as applied to the people part of it, what do you see or what have you experienced that were some leaks or we might say blind spots that you have been working or have filled? And then what do you see that other people struggle with when it comes to the people aspect?
Well, there's a little bit of an overarching quote I'm looking at on my wall. It's from James Clear from Atomic Habits. Goals are for people who care about winning once. Systems are for people who care about winning repeatedly.
Hmm.
And I have that in front of my home desk, my work desk. Um, the system, to get back to your question, the thing with the team that I see people doing a little differently than what we now do is a lot of focus on conflict resolution, trying to adapt people to what you want them to be, to coach them, heavily, heavily coach them. A whole bunch, like the 50,000 foot view, is a whole bunch of focus and effort on changing people. I don't agree with that. 80/20. So 80% I don't agree with that. 20%, of course, I do. You're not just getting a new person every time something needs to be tweaked. But for the way I kind of think about it and the way we do it, build my team, is you've got A players, B players, C players, D players, for example. Okay, just one way to describe. And what we found is A players only want to work with A players. They'll tolerate B players. They'll quit their job and leave on short notice for if they have to work with the C and D players. And the C and D players, sometimes you can, what we see that makes them C and D players is a mismatch to the role they're being asked to provide for the business. And so, we've had a person who was almost fired, and then we switched her to another role, and she's perfect. Same person, right?
Mhm.
Just a different role within the business. So it's not always the person being a bad person, or like people tend to really throw those things around. I find that's not the case. It's a fit to the role. And so what does this have to do with like the conflict and all that? There's a whole pile of conflict at the C and D level. I would argue that in most businesses, um, you you let the A players cook, the new term. You let them run, provide guidelines, of course, crystal clear vision, but you let them run. They tend not to cause as many problems for the business as the C and the Ds. And I think that is generally because the C and the D people are being asked to be inauthentic, show up for work, not being themselves, try to do something, be a like, hey, it's Monday morning. I'm gonna roll into work. I'm a square peg, and I got to figure out how to be a round peg to get in that round hole. That's work. It's cognitive overhead. It's difficult. It can't be done. That's the ending point on this. You can't do that in mass with people. And so imagine the conflict that creates for team members. They don't wake up in the morning, Monday morning, and say, I want to shaft this business. It doesn't work like that, right? I mean, they're like, I got to go in, I'm going to try, and just generally, it's probably not going to be successful. And that's what we tend to see in Build My Team.
I agree with you that a lot of times we villainize people or we got to change. I think that, we think there's pain, there's conflict, the other person is the problem. And so we do think about personalities instead of specific behaviors. And what I really love about systems thinking is that we can get really clear as to what are the kinds of behaviors we want out of different kinds of roles.
Yeah,
And then behaviors you can work on. Something is working, it isn't working. We can set standards as to what it looks like to do this excellently. And then in a relatively dispassionate way, we can talk about certain kinds of behaviors and then what's
yeah.
acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Well, and that's why I said 80/20. Okay. The 20%, I'm not going to try and change the person. What I'm going to do is make absolutely crystal clear that the vision, their goals, like what I'm setting out for what I'm defining as high performance for them, that they have a crystal clear understanding of that. Especially early on in my career, it wasn't a them problem, it was a me problem. A big fat me problem because I expected people to read my mind. Turns out, without a solid tinfoil hat and antennas, you can't do that.
Right.
So, on the entrepreneur side of things, it took a long time to realize that. And once I was able to realize that, it's still hard because I don't naturally, I mean, uh, I'm good at very few things, and what I'm good at, I'm really good at, but there are very few of them. And so translating those to people who don't have a similar talent set requires, well, bluntly, translation. And I think that happens to a tremendous amount of entrepreneurs. And until you realize that, it's a real showstopper for performance.
Yeah. Absolutely. Clear as kind, right? So we just think we get so frustrated. Why is this person not performing? Why are they not being professional? And we haven't articulated what that means in this business at this time,
Right.
because we think we have communicated, and yet we just have not.
Yeah. And so you have to, you owe it to the person, and you owe it to the business, and of course you owe it to yourself as a leader to make sure that is crystal clear.
Mhm.
And even when you think it's crystal clear, then you still got to peel back a couple layers of the proverbial onion to really make sure it is. um, and then communicate it and make sure there's understanding on the other side. Now when that's all said and done, they may still be the square peg round hole
Mhm.
issue. Um, but you can't move a person out of their, it's poor leadership to move a person out of their position until you've taken those steps. And once you have, if it's still not working out, then okay,
Yeah.
fire, move them, let them go, whatever, transfer them to something they would be better at. You can do that with a clear conscience. Um, but it isn't about rolling in and just because they can't read your mind, you get rid of them. That's poor leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this idea that I think we can ought do it more in all different sorts of rungs of life of disassociating or uncoupling. I'm not good at a particular thing, therefore
Right.
I'm rotten, or I am whatever it might be. This character assassination that just sort of happens because we're in the busyness of life. This person is causing some kind of friction or problem for me. And the fact of the matter is not everybody is suited for every role at every
Right.
organization, right? I might have some skill sets to work for you, but
Hmm.
maybe our personalities don't work well together, and maybe in a different office I would be fine. Or, I mean, that's just the way with leadership. And so sometimes we just don't resonate with the people there. And so it's better for everybody to move on. And then, of course, sometimes our skill set, right? That's largely a lot of it. Our skill sets, as you were saying, is just they don't match up. And so, the
Right.
kind of stress it takes to be performative
Hmm.
at work is going to show, and it's only going to be able we can only sustain that for so long. And when we're clear, we can find that sooner rather than later. The
Right.
problem is when it just goes on and then it compounds, and then nobody has said anything to me for 6 months, 9 months, and then people get entrenched, and then that spills over into the group, and then you get all these sort of core problems.
Yeah. Um, fellow named Frank. I work with him. He runs Build My Team and also is the operations head of our practice, not the practice manager, but the operations head. He is a fabulous communicator. Like you said, the stuff spills over 6 to 9 months. Hasn't happened once,
Mm.
not once. Um, but on the other hand, he's not jumping down people's throats in any way, shape, or form. So people make mistakes. We all understand that. You make the same mistake twice in a shorter period of time, you're on the radar. You make the third mistake, well, now we're trending. We have to
Mhm.
do a little bit of a course correction and have at least a discussion about it.
Mhm.
And most of the time, people just are unaware.
Mhm.
Systems and processes are not naturally followed by people. Build My Team has a filter for that where people are inclined to follow them. But let's face it, most people don't. I mean, we're not looking at librarians with a Dewey Decimal System here. Humans don't operate like that.
Mhm.
So there's always a level of tweaking, a little bit of nudging, that type of stuff in order to stay on these systems and processes.
Such an
And then,
excellent.
then of course, you gotta, sorry to interrupt, but you have to adjust the systems and processes too. They need some tweaking and things like that over time sometimes too.
I just love that point because sometimes it's like I'm either going to be system and process or I'm going to be people oriented. And people oriented is like sort of the soft, malleable, each individual will develop something for them, or the hard nosed by the book. This is the system and this is what the system requires. And as you articulated, it's not one or the other, it's both together. How do we have standards and practice? How do we have systems to help streamline? And then how do we allow for the individual aspect?
Yeah.
And that is going to be flexible and it's going to change over time. You get pandemics, you get changes
Oh,
in how the
yeah.
system works, and
Yeah.
changes in the labor market. All of these changes and just expectations of what a generation, 20 years ago expected at work versus what a generation today expects at work, and then all those people together.
Yeah.
How do we be agile and meet the demands of the people in front of us? And that takes sustained intentional effort so that the
Yeah.
systems continually get it right. And then we're also then not treating people as cogs in the machine, but still robust people with dignity and worth.
Well, absolutely. And from the entrepreneur side of things, one thing I learned a long time ago is there is no day off. And what I mean by that is every 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you either run the business or the business runs you. There's no third alternative. It's one or the other. Now, you don't have to do much on running the business as a leader sometimes, but you take a couple days of not doing that and there's drift. It's the nature of it. Um, so once you kind of realize that on the entrepreneurial side of things, I'm not talking about working 7 days a week, but being cognizant of the fact that that drift happens extremely quickly,
Mhm.
regardless of who your team is. They could be doing an absolutely amazing job, and it just minimizes the drift, but it will always be there.
Mhm. Oh, I absolutely agree. Because what I'm interested in is conflict management. How do we address issues early, often swiftly and justly? And so many organizations will, if it's even on their radar, maybe they'll go through some training. And so people have, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. But if you're not practicing it and practicing it regularly, and when something comes up 6 months, a year down the road, have some touch point or somebody to maybe brainstorm with to figure out what to do. Those skills are just like with anything. If you don't use them, you're not going to be able to employ it excellently so that
Yeah.
we can deal with what's happened and move forward. I also, everything is in the process of falling apart. And so it's up to us it's like you don't buy a house and you're like, you're done with it. You buy a house and now you're pouring money into it, right?
Right. Yep.
You replace the roof and then this goes out and then that goes out. And then eventually the roof comes around again. It is this constant thinking of and holding, or else they're nobody's fault, just things and systems and things fall apart.
hmm And that's a fascinating way to look at it. Um, Without question, you have to continuously put effort in, but that goes for anything worth doing, right?
Right. Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. You don't go to the gym once, you're like, woo, I worked out my muscles, but I'm done. Atrophy
Yep.
sets in if you are sitting on the couch, but then it can also be overcome by getting off the couch, right?
hmm
And so it's where are we putting our time? So I want to hear about Build My Team. What is the origin? How did that come about? Let's start there.
Well, it came about from our practice. We were hiring wrong. We were using resumes for hiring, interviewing, uh, unknowingly being manipulated by the people that we were interviewing. We were just flat out looking for, oh boy, it's tough to admit this, but we weren't looking for A and B players. Um, we were, our process was unintentionally set up to hire C and D players. And the reason I say that is we were looking for um, people that needed help. We're doctors. We were trying to help them. So we were approaching it from that standpoint. And this is going to sound awful, clinical, like, cutthroat. Nah, it wasn't like that. We were we were just trying to help people, but the counterpoint of that is really empathetic um, docs who love to help people. Well, I respectfully tell our clients, you need to be kept as far away as humanly possible from the hiring process. You're going to be, you are the wrong person for that job. And boy, that's like a lightning rod of a thing to say. But Build My Team was created to provide a reliable path slash process to find A players, B plus players, get them onto a team with in an automated way with virtually no work. And it originally focused on eye care. We found out in a real hurry that private practice in North America, doesn't matter what type of healthcare you provide, they're virtually all the same, with a couple small exceptions. And the positions are virtually all the same across the practices. So we created a process. It didn't work, tweaked it, worked a little bit, and very rapidly iterated to the point now where when we provide somebody for our clients, a candidate for our clients, we know with about 97% certainty whether or not they can do the job. And they're not the folks that you'll get into an interview and manipulate the heck out of you. We don't hire for experience. That's a red flag in our model. We measure how fast they learn, and we bring people to the table that learn incredibly quickly, don't have bad habits that need to be untrained. And so you end up with these A players and B players who just hit the ground running very, very quickly.
Hmm.
Um, and shameless plug, it's very affordable.
Well, there's a lot of talk today about the abysmal place that hiring practices are in, at least in the States, with, these,
Yeah,
how do I get past the AI bot, right? What do I
yeah.
need to do to my resume so that the flavor of this month and whatever the AI bots are looking for this month, I
Yeah.
can get through. And it's very demoralizing. Of course, it's hard to be on the job market if you are without a job, right?
Right.
Best time to find a job is when you have a job and you're looking for maybe something different. But that's just not the case for a lot of people. And so, um, so I, so how do you, if you're not just looking at resumes and it's
Mhm.
automated, are there tests that people take to show that they can learn and how does that work then?
Well, we start off with a concept of we're going to reject almost all the candidates that we bring in. This is not, we're not looking for the needle in a haystack. We're looking for the right needle in a huge stack of needles. They almost all look the same nowadays.
Mhm.
Um, and so we write the job description for our clients. We publish it to 20 different job boards. We get oodles of applicants. And as soon as they apply for the job, within 5 seconds, their cell phone buzzes, they get a text, and that's the start. The text asks them to complete our hiring process, and it's done using psychometric assessments. That's the core part of it. So what we're measuring is what their natural strengths and talents are. And this is a fundamental change in hiring that is so profound, I will never, ever, ever have anything to do with hiring without it. It is the crystal ball. You can predict how people handle stress, handle process, how detail oriented they are, their communication styles. We have pages and pages of information on these folks, all from about 15 minutes of assessments. And so the core concept is finding these strengths and talents and then matching those people to the position. So you need a very, very specific, not a round hole, not a square hole. You're looking for a rhombus. I just pulled that one out. We're going to find your rhombus. Okay. And that's the type of process. Um, it's automated, as I said, up to a certain point. The automation stops when we find these finalist candidates. We send them a one-way video interview, and that is where we do checks and balances against the automated process. We don't care what they look like. We don't care if they're male or female. We don't even know their gender. As like our hiring system is blind, completely blind by design. Um, so the video interviews get reviewed, and we're looking for how they're going to represent your practice or your business. And that gets those folks, the finalist candidates get sent over to the practice or the small business clients. And at that point, you can't make a bad decision. We already know they can do the job. As I said, you pick the person that you think would be the best fit for your team. That's the whole purpose of it.
Well, I mean, it sounds absolutely fabulous and so exciting from people who are hiring because we all know that an excellent hire can just can be transformative. And we know a bad hire can be
Yeah.
transformative in the other direction.
Hmm.
I do want to ask you this question. So, I imagine everybody listening to this resonates with them. We say A, B, C, D
Yeah.
performers, right? And yet, I very rarely have come across somebody who's going to say they're anything less than an A, maybe B, um, and they're going to have whatever reason. And my maybe experience them is they're barely holding on to D status. Like, why are you even here? But we're the
Yeah.
hero of our stories. Very few
Hmm.
of us are going to say that we're the problem. The problem is the system. And if they would speak into me and if they would listen to me, I'm holding down the fort. I do all these important things. And so I hear what you're saying about these different levels of performance, and I also love that you're saying it's not necessarily the person, it's the person in this particular role. So if somebody wants to take a square look at themselves, because
Hmm.
we all want to be A, right? Um, what do you see as a good reflective practice to kind of really see where you are in the grading level in your particular organization?
Oh boy, tough question. The first thing that pops into my mind is as you're describing that person, they use the word me a lot. Why? They were describing the work environment. If only they would talk to me, if only. So there was a dichotomy between they and me. Okay, timeout. There's some serious red flags surrounding that 15-second description that you gave. Timeout on that. The If it's a they and a me, then it's a me versus them. Why? So the description you said started out with a level of conflict between the person describing their employer. It, if I really read into this, it was they are not doing enough to make me successful, and they are not communicating with me. No, no, no. How to be a C and D player. You just wrote the description right there. Okay, that you follow this cookbook, you guarantee yourself you're going to be a C, a D, or even worse player. The A players and the B players they don't work like that. Oh, geez, I'm sucking at this job. Is this something that I'm doing here? It's the lens is focused internally first, and they'll also go back to their management or their whomever it might be and have some discussions. It might be bumpy, it might be bigger than speed bumps, it might be driving up a small hill and down again or off a cliff. You never know. But it's not focused on me, me, me. That's one of the first things I just took out of that discussion. Um, yeah, that's the quick and dirty analysis of that little description.
I think that's very insightful because I talk to people who are in conflict, which means they're in some kind of pain. They feel
Mhm.
like they have been treated unjustly, and maybe they have many times.
Maybe they have. Hmm.
There's a lot that goes on in organizations, and some of it we misread, and some of it we aren't, right? People are mistreated in organizations, and that when we are mistreated, we have this way of drawing inward, and so you can have somebody who's uh, let's say an A player, right, in this
Hmm.
language and killing it, and then maybe a new manager comes in and either because person is mismanaging or for some other sort of reasons, this person falls down and now
Right.
they are in this defensive mode. I
Yep.
think that you're right that if you are a professional person, you're going to start with, okay, well, what's going on here? And this self-reflective. But I
Hmm.
think once we start that language of it's me versus them, that should be a sign that something is dysfunctional here. Something has got to change, whether it's me, whether it's them,
Yeah.
me and them,
I
to
mean,
be
that's a
us again.
neon,
Yeah.
right. It's a neon sign. It's not Vegas huge, but the light is blinking, you know.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing about A players is this is a quote. I can't remember who said this, but it's very simple. Winners find ways. And there are so many times that as an A player, you're going to have to manage around, through, over, underneath your boss. That happens all the time. They're going to find ways to do that. And if they can't get through that, they're just going to move, move positions. Um, but the discussion isn't them, right? It's how to figure out a way through this to achieve the goals. And that's all the difference in the world.
Let me give that some thought. I think that's really interesting. And the idea that winner finds the way. And sometimes, I've talked to people who, we're not really talking about illegal behavior like
Right.
bullying. People get
Yeah.
subjected to some really horrific things. And that when crimes are being committed against you, or bullying is not necessarily a crime, but it can be so severe that people's mental and physical health are impacted for years to come because of the kind of
Yeah.
adverse treatment. And
It's awful.
that
Of
is a
course.
real reality, right? But we're
Right.
not really talking, we're not talking about that. We're talking about
Yeah.
the everyday kinds of things. And work is difficult. We ought
Hmm.
not expect it won't be difficult. We're not going to be best friends with maybe anybody at work, but we can be good colleagues. And we may not like everybody's management style, but it is, I think, professionalism. I like the way you described it. It's up to us. How are we showing up? How are we going to navigate? And this sort of resilience of what can I draw from my past? How do I have that capacity to deal with the difficulty, whether it's, if I'm in the marketing department, if I'm whatever it might be that I'm doing, and there are going to be challenges externally, internally. How am I
Hmm.
going to navigate that? How am I going to find help to navigate that? So my heart is very much in middle management because it is within
Hmm.
the middle managers who typically run all the people, right? You've got the
Yeah.
C-suite, they are the vision, they're the strategic part, but the everyday running of people is usually done by middle management. With Build My Team, do you have or are you concerned with training middle managers, or I suppose you hire middle management?
We
Um,
do.
but what do you look for? Because many times, of course, middle managers get that because they were good. they were a good accountant, and so now they're in charge of the accountants, and those skills are not the same thing at all.
Not even close. Not even close. I'll give you an example. Frank was brought in from 30 years of running banking teams. He has he had zero experience in healthcare teams of any type. Oh my goodness. It was wonderful. Found out in a real big hurry. I mean, I already realized this, but the skill set wasn't in the industry or the profession. It was in the people. And I got news for you. People are like your people skills are transferable to any place with people. This should not come as a shock to anybody, but it's forgotten about. And so I could have cared less that he had never been into a healthcare practice. I remember the conversation. I said, "Well, I can teach you the how to run the practice. I can teach you that. It's not going to take long because you are a duck to water in this environment. Um, and I also knew very early on I was going to learn a massive amount from how he runs teams. Um, so we like again with build my team and the managerial side of things, we don't necessarily care that you don't have domain experience, professional experience. You're coming from business A to business B, and business B's never heard of business A. Well, all I want to know is how you ran the teams. Because again, we can teach you how to run the business. Somebody will. Um, and it's not like you're going to be sitting there with a spoon out, needing to be spoon fed. Those aren't the people we're bringing to the table. No, they're going to hit you up with questions. You answer the questions, and then they're going to come back to you with five different ways you've never even thought about the problem, type thing, right? Um, so that's how we're generally approaching things, and it works exceptionally well.
I absolutely agree. Those so-called soft skills are very, and if you don't have those, your business is not going to run very well. So let me ask you this:
Right.
so you are looking for these A players, these high performers.
Hmm.
Do you also screen the people who want to work for you? I mean, work with you, who want your service to make sure that you're not sending people into toxic environments or who have a high turnover rate. Do you have anything like that as well?
Yes. You're probably the first person who's ever asked me about that in well over 100 podcasts. And I've always wondered why I'm not asked that question more. From the client standpoint, we start with a consultation call with the clients, and it's to find out the nitty gritty about the practice. Sometimes it's logistics, like what are your hours? Who are you trying to bring onto your team? Well, I want to bring on somebody who'll do 10 separate things exceptionally well. Okay, we can't do that. Nobody can do that. What we're going to do is help you focus on what the primary, secondary, and a small tertiary goal are for the person's role, and then document that and put our special sauce on it for the job description. But that's generally where we focus. What what we're looking for also kind of part B of the discussion with the clients is what's your work environment like? Okay. If you're having trouble holding on to people, there are some reasons for that. Sometimes they're external, but most of the times they're internal to the business. Just be honest. It's not like you're going to tell us stories we haven't heard before. If you are a tyrant of a doctor or a tyrant of a business owner, okay, we got to meet you where you're at with that. And that means we're going to hire people with a very specific set of strengths and talents. One is, of course, stress tolerance. You know, that's actively measured. I cannot stop talking about that because it is a game changer for those types of environments. On the other hand, if you're Mr. or Mrs. Mellow as a business owner, and it's a lot calmer environment, things like that, then we have to hire appropriately for that type of business too, because somebody who is looking for um, more of a more action in their job may not want to be in that environment. So yes, there's screening done on both sides. Um, and I will say as well that the third thing we're really screening for is somebody who's going to commit HR atrocities. So we've had that happen in the past where the person that they wanted to hire was described to us. I don't know how detailed I want to get on a podcast, but just let your imagination run wild.
Mhm.
And that actually happened. No, we shut that down, and it was shut down instantly,
Yeah.
absolutely instantly. We had another person who did that in writing, which was special. That was shut down instantly as well. That's not right.
Mhm.
There's no business ethics required. It's simply not right to do that. And that's why our hiring system is blind.
Mhm.
I mean, our automation, the output of the automation is a thumbs up beside a name and their what we call their insight report. The insight report is what the clients use to find out what the strengths and talents are of the person. It's a PDF that's sent to them. It tells you all about the candidate. But that's why it's blind. So that's what we're doing when we're talking to the clients. And it really works out exceptionally well because when we start working with somebody, we already know we can help them. We know the depth of it. We know, like with exceptionally high certainty, exactly what we need to do to get this business rocking and rolling.
Yeah. So when you think about your own career and you've worked with a variety of different people and being an entrepreneur and running your own several businesses and in the high stress environment of the healthcare field. And so, you know, wanting to help people in the healthcare field can make it difficult given insurance and other sorts of issues and maybe people's lifestyles. So there's all that stress baked into the job itself. Can you tell us about maybe a conflict you've had at some point in your career and how you navigated that conflict and maybe what you would do differently now if you would do something differently now?
Oh boy. Well, there's lots and lots of those. I think from a 50,000 foot view, it was realizing that, like I said earlier, I'm only good at a couple of things and that's it. And one is on the visionary side of things. There's a book that I read called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman that was really transformational for me because in it, there's a concept of a visionary and the other concept is an integrator. In business, it's basically the visionary versus the operation side of things. And the majority of the conflict came from, like I said, for everybody else. I was being asked by the business to be the round peg and I'm in a square hole. What the business needed was somebody who could translate my vision to a certain extent into the systems and processes. And, we work together on refining those systems and processes. But without the concept of the operations person or integrator, it tends to fall flat and cause all kinds of conflicts. And that's where Frank and I work exceptionally well together because we've got that together, and it's fantastic. So this is one of these neat examples where it wasn't external, it was internal. It was a me problem, not a them problem. And once that was addressed and the solution was executed, that's when the fun really started.
It's a wonderful example because I mean, I think most conflicts are a me problem in the sense that I'm responding to this person at this time, and how we grow as leaders or in anything is through self-reflection, right? So,
Hmm.
um, most of the time we don't think that we're wrong, or else we would be doing something different. But as we start to reflect, how can I get better? Where can I grow? Then we start to see those blind spots. We start to see what we're really good at, and the things in which we need help. And so how we can complement um, how other people can compliment us and we can compliment them to be even better instead of
Yeah.
being discouraged when we're supposed to be all things and nobody is all things.
Right. And I think early realization of that would have helped me a lot. That, especially on the doctor side of things, you're trained to be an expert in something so ridiculously narrow, it's not even funny. But yet, there's a societal pressure or otherwise, I don't know how to describe that, that makes you think you should be an expert on all kinds of stuff. And, oh, well, my extremely narrow expertise extrapolates to the entire global universe. That's ridiculous. But it's something that you come out of school, maybe not thinking it intentionally, but you kind of thinking it accidentally or otherwise, and it's dreadful. What a horrible way to handicap yourself moving forward. The the better approach is I'm really really good at a couple of things and have no clue about other stuff. And I say that a lot to people, and they look at me like I'm joking. I'm not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But if I stay in my couple of lanes, um, and I'm the team concept, you get the right people on the bus, then you get them in the right seats on the bus. Well, my job is to stay off the bus, but provide the map, provide the guardrails, make sure there's lots and lots of gas in the tank and everybody's fed, and get out of their way and let them drive the bus at a speed that I couldn't even. I mean, the team in the practice is Formula One level bus driving, and I didn't even think that was possible. In the old days, it was like, let's get this school bus up to 55 miles an hour and hope, and everything's shaking and rattling. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. But that's how it was. That's not how it is now.
Yeah. We have an obsession with experts. We love an expert. And
Oh yeah.
I taught philosophy for over 20 years in my whole life. Most of my life, it was in academia. And so
Hmm.
they are experts and they do know something very specific, and that is great. But then because they have a particular title or they had a certain kind of education, now I'm an expert on all these other sorts of things. And it's, it's a kind of like drinking the Kool-Aid. Well, other people say this, and so I need to perform at this level, but it's false, and it stops
Right.
conversation, and it stops that self-reflection, and then everybody's just on a rickety school bus instead of
Yeah.
really owning those things that we're good at and getting better at those things
Right.
and finding the other people. But we're not going to partner with other people if we don't think we need them.
There's a fellow, Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. His concept is to focus only on your strengths. What you don't want to do is have strong weaknesses. And it's a fascinating concept because going through life, especially in North America, you don't want to seem weak at anything or bad at anything. It's a completely ridiculous concept.
Yeah.
I will never, ever, ever be good at a whole bunch of things, no matter what I do. I'll never do it. On the other hand, I can be world class at those couple of things. And the reality is, society values the strengths. It does not value in any way the weaknesses. So when you're building a team, you bring in the folks to shore up the weaknesses, and you bring in folks who are fantastic at what you're terrible at. So when I'm talking to doctors about that, make a list of all the things you absolutely love to do, can't wait to do. Make a list of the stuff that you would rather put flaming bamboo under your fingernails than do, and then you bring somebody in who, and this is the hardest realization. There are people who look at your flaming bamboo list and say, "I cannot wait to do that." And you're like, "What? What? Are you kidding me? You want flaming bamboo under your face?" No, 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 this isn't that at all. I get and I've seen people get massively excited about the stuff that I am anaphylactically allergic to.
Yeah.
I'll break out in hives thinking I got to do this type of stuff. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll have that done by it's 9 a.m. now, probably 9:30." And the whole time I'm thinking it's take me a day to slog through. And I'd
Yeah.
get half done. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah, it's just so true. When my oldest child, when he was in kindergarten, and I remember talking to the kindergarten teacher, and she said, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "I teach philosophy." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, you couldn't pay me enough to do that. It'd be so awful." And I'm
Right.
looking around, the room has exploded in Cheerios, and there's a bathroom in this room because she's taking 5-year-olds to the bathroom. I'm like,
Yep.
"What are you talking about? You could not
Yeah.
pay me enough to be in this room." But that's when we really take a look at what our strengths are. Like, I'm a big believer in what you're talking about, positive psychology. If you want somebody to get better, focus on what they're doing and how can you dial that up? You get people like,
Mhm.
oh, how can I do this thing that I love even better? Oh, that those creative juices. But then also realizing what I'm not good at, and who can I partner with? And yeah, maybe they love that flaming bamboo.
Yeah, there's a there's another concept from Dan Sullivan called who, not how. And the concept there is I'm not going to figure out how to accomplish a goal that I'm terrible at. I'm going to figure out who the person who I'm going to identify a who's already got the ability to do that. And so in a business environment, oh, it's a completely novel approach in so many different ways. You don't end up with a team trying to reinvent the wheel, recreate anything. No, you bring in a person who's done it before, who's gotten those results. Um, and they're not starting from scratch. They're starting from 80, 90%. Tweak a little bit of what the business needs, what your goals are, and they're going to achieve it in a fraction of the time and for a fraction of the cost and for a minuscule amount of the frustration and the hair pulling and all the rest of that stuff. Conflict, of course. That's a really interesting approach to solving problems that I've adopted, and again, wouldn't go back.
I love it. I think it's also an ode to the great thing about diversity, right? We
Hmm.
think about diversity, of course, very narrowly many times, but diversity of experience, of interest, of ability, and and that can help you really value your team because
Hmm.
that person is filling this thing that I desperately want them to do, or else I'm going to be doing it, and I
Right.
can trust them, right? And this, and
Hmm.
then when we feel trusted and when we feel like, oh, they want us here, that kind of synergy just makes it, like you said, Formula One. How do you have an excellent team? Well, when we have these kinds of differences, and then we really are so thankful that we have these differences so that we
Hmm.
can get to the wherever it is that we want to go.
Yeah, and that's to be celebrated. This isn't something like, especially with Build My Team, um, we're bringing in people from all walks of life to do these positions, and they almost always come from a position that was not wonderful. Like this is a major step up for them. They are incredibly appreciative. Our clients are the ones that gave them the chance without the C and D player component coming into it, like I said earlier. Um, this is, it's very, very exciting for us to be able to help people like this. And then, of course, the team members turn around and provide outstanding healthcare, or if they're not in the healthcare business, outstanding customer service, really big contributions to the business or to the clients. And that's really, really exciting for us.
That's wonderful. I so much want people to have healthy work environments, and a lot of that
Hmm.
is finding the right place and being plugged in and being able to contribute to this larger mission of helping. And we
Yeah,
help in all different sorts of, all different kinds of venues in so many different sorts of ways. And so
right.
my last question for you is, as
Sure.
you think about the future of work, what do you think
Hmm.
needs to happen so that not only will all workers be treated with dignity and respect, but that people will be encouraged to thrive and flourish?
Hire for strengths and talents. That, I mean, you can obviously tell I believe in this,
Yes.
but you you get to you get to walk in to work on a Monday morning. You roll up to your work and your desk, your whatever it is. You sit down and you've got this. You know that you're today you're going to be able to help a bunch of people. You're going to get some some griping, some moaning from whomever, but you're going to be able to help them. You're going to be trusted that you can actually do it. You're given the resources to actually do it because the boss already figured out, hey, you're really, really good at this. I just need to give them XYZ and get out of their way. And you're not ever asked to be something that you're not. So you start to think in terms of that individual, and what are the chances they have a smile on their face by noon? What are the chances they have a smile on their face by the end of the day? This is a pretty good gig. I'm really able to help people contribute, and I feel good about myself at the end of the day. And oh, by the way, it flies by because I'm really good at it. Now, from the external standpoint, the boss, the other team members are looking like, hey, this person's really got this. I don't have to, from a boss standpoint, I don't have to micromanage. I don't have to get up in their face about all this other stuff. The team members are like, okay, well, we know that that person's not going to be a boat anchor today. They're not going to drag the entire team down. Um, they are excellent at it, and I really love working with that person because they really do a great job. I don't have to do their work for them. I don't have to carry them. I don't have to any of that stuff. And it becomes an environment of terrific mutual respect. That's how that works. Um, and that's my vision for the workforce. You'll notice no description about AI, no description about any of that stuff. Whatever the job tasks are bordering on immaterial to that because the person's fit to that role is so tight. And the teams fit to the roles are so tight. But you end up with this mutual respect, these capabilities that are magnified tremendously. And at the end of the day, your performance um, creates a level of tremendous success.
I love that. So if they want to build my team, how would they
Mhm.
find you and your business?
Well, really easy. Go to www.buildmyteam.com and schedule a consultation. That link in the top corner. Everything's completely scheduled so that it respects everybody's time. Let us help you. We're the who for hiring these team members in your business. Um, it's affordable, extremely time efficient. You can go through the entire process to candidates landing in your office within an hour's worth of work. Believe it or not, that's how time efficient it is. So that's what I would ask for the people listening. Let us help you.
That's wonderful. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time today and for
Thank you.
build my team, which is just, finding those fits. Sometimes it does feel like a needle in the haystack or a hexagon in the haystack on both sides. So
Yeah,
to have products like that's wonderful.
thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure talking with you today, Mary.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, so much for being on Conflict Managed. What a wonderful product you've developed, organization to help other people find each other. And of course, it is the case that when our skill set, our aptitude, our desires match what an organization is looking for, the probability that we're going to have satisfaction and healthy work environments just goes up tremendously. So thank you for that work and for fulfilling that need in the marketplace. Conflict Managed is produced by Third Party Workplace Conflict Restoration Services and hosted by me, Mary Brown. You can find us online at 3pconflictrestoration.com. Come back. We have new episodes every Tuesday. And if you want to watch this conversation with Dr. Mike Neal and myself, it's at YouTube at 3P Conflict Restoration. If you haven't had a chance to check out my latest book, How to Be Unprofessional at Work, Tips to Ensure Failure, it's 80 tips of what not to do and starts a conversation about what we ought to do instead. And I'm excited to say that I am working on a book right now, actually two books, but the one I want to talk about is about generation gaps. How do we deal with generation gaps at work? And so hopefully that project will be out within the year, I hope. Our music is courtesy of Dove Pilot. And remember, conflict is normal and expected. Let's deal with it. Until next time, take care.